Well, folks, it's about that time, and I thought I'd tell you a story from the dark side of the edge of the Spider-Verse. Meet Patton Parnell, someone who lives with his abusive Uncle Ted and likes experimenting on animals. If I had to describe Patton in one word, it would be creep. So we know how the story goes. Patton gets bit by a radioactive spider. And of course, he discovers he has spider powers, but he didn't get to enjoy them long after his Uncle Ted starts to beat him for no reason. Patton got hungry, real hungry, and he couldn't keep normal food down, but he discovered something, that he needed meat. And later that night, he waited on Uncle Ted to get home with the meal he said he had better have on that table. As he lunged at his uncle from the ceiling, he said, with great power comes great appetite. Patton then started to lure people back to his house, including Sarah Jane, who lived next door. Sarah did try to get away. Then she discovered the horror of the monster he had truly became. Lucky for her, a worse monster was hunting him. Unfortunately for Sarah Jane, you don't always get a happy ending. Let's talk about the time someone laughed at the Joker. Meet Tommy here. He's an officer who can't understand why everyone's so afraid of Joker. So one day he finds one of his secret hideouts and sneaks in. While hiding, he was listening to one of the Joker's monologues and he couldn't help but laugh. Joker and Harley find him and ask him what's so funny. He says, "You treat these people less than human. They're not your friends. You don't have friends. You're all alone." As he's being saved by Batman and Robin, the Joker says, "Yeah, that is pretty funny, but I got a better joke for you." 1 year later, the Joker breaks out of jail, but Tommy's not worried until he returns home and his best friend is strung up dead. So Joker tells him, "You were right back in the day. I don't have any friends, but I do have one now." 6 months later, Joker breaks out of jail again and pays Tommy a visit, just to let him know he misses him. Another year later, after Tommy's changed his name, he's broken into his home to dance with his wife. He just wanted to show his best friend his slideshow of his victims. Months later, Tommy's in hiding, being forced to listen to his friends get murdered through the phone. This time, Joker shows up to visit him without his face. This all ends with Tommy being sent to Arkham, where he says, "I only have one friend, and that's the Joker." I thought I'd tell you the origins of one of my favorite villains, Sabertooth. Victor Creed came from a normal family like any other child, until one day he had ended up attacking his brother over a piece of pie. This time it wasn't normal horseplay. His powers had kicked in, and so did his killer instinct. Now his father was a religious man, and he said, "You got the devil in you, boy," and for the next few months he would rip out his fangs and tear out his claws, then chained him in the basement and told him he's gonna keep doing it until the devil leaves his body. His mom still cared for Victor. She was afraid of what her husband would do to him. Victor told his mother, "You shouldn't be scared of him. You should be scared of me." That next spring, Victor decided it was time to go. Funny part of it is that his father wanted to free his son from the devil, but didn't know he was creating one when Victor tore his arm off to get out of the cellar. As he burst through the window with pliers in hand, he said, "I told you, Ma, you should have listened," as he jumped across the table and mauled his father. As he sat there eating that pie, realizing it was 1 year later, he told his brother happy birthday. I thought I'd tell the story of the origin of the Clown Hunter. Bao was an ordinary teenager who just loved to play video games. One day his mom needed him to help them in their restaurant. She said, "I need you and your dad needs you. You don't need to get lost in that fake world." But that day Harley Quinn walked into their restaurant. Right behind her was the Joker. They just got done doing a job and they were hungry. Bao's parents gave them the food and said they would eat and then they'll leave and we're not gonna have any problems. Joker thought that the meal was delicious and he decided to give them a tip, and the tip was to not breathe. Having his parents murdered in front of him, there was someone inside the restaurant who wanted to talk to him. Batman told him he was sorry. Bao asked, "Are you gonna do something about this?" And Batman said, "Yes, I promise," as he gave him a batarang. Years later, nothing had changed and his neighborhood was getting destroyed in the Joker War. Then one of his neighbors told him one of these clowns burned a little old woman downstairs. That moment, Bao realized Batman was full of shit. He made a costume for himself, stuck that batarang into a bat, and began to protect his neighborhood. And the people cheered for their savior, the Clown Hunter. Who would I be more afraid of, the Penguin or Black Mask? I think it's easier to answer this question with a story. One night, the Penguin takes someone he believes to be the love of his life out to a fancy dinner so he can confess his love to her. But in the midst of him doing that, the chef in the back laughed in his direction. Maybe the chef had thought of a joke he heard the other day. Maybe it was a coincidence while he was glancing around the room. Either way, it didn't matter. The Penguin was about to end that man's life until Violet stopped him. But the Penguin let it go. He was like, "You know what? You right. Let's enjoy our dinner." So they had a good time and the Penguin never said a word about the chef who laughed. A few days later, the building had a new owner, the restaurant was forced to close, and the employees were fired. The day after, the chef's girlfriend was deported to Romania, and his best friend was arrested for kid corn. New tenant next to him blasted music all day and night, and the landlord wouldn't take his calls. Then 2 months later, after a few more things happened to him, he hung himself, all because he had a chance encounter with the Penguin. Definitely Penguin. Who is the biggest menace on this list? This would be hard if y'all didn't put Thanos on this list, but to understand why I say that, let me tell you a story. This is a story about how Thanos visited someone on their birthday every single year. Down below here, this is young David. On his first birthday, Thanos stole his blanket. On his 5th birthday, Thanos murdered his father. On his 16th birthday, Thanos texted his girlfriend and made them break up. On his 21st birthday, Thanos poisoned all his friends. On his 25th birthday, Thanos burned down his college, and on the 27th, made him lose his job. On his 30th birthday, something miraculous happened. Thanos just didn't show up. Apparently he was defeated and exiled by the Avengers. So then he thought he could have a good 31st birthday. Nope, Thanos showed up and said, hey, I'm sorry for missing last year. Let me open up a black hole around your house. On his 45th birthday, David's not looking good. He's living in squalor, he's living in trash, he's just bad. David just figures he's doing this to push him to try and be a better person. But then Thanos says, no, David, I just don't care, because the message here is that Thanos just did it because he can. But what is the pettiest thing that Thanos has ever done? Now, Thanos has done a lot of petty things over the years, but there is one that stood out to me like no other. See, the pettiest thing Thanos could have ever done is help an old woman cross the street. Yeah, you heard me right. Thanos took time out of his day to help a little old woman across the street. But why is this the pettiest thing he's ever done? Because even though this seems like a good deed for the day, Thanos is actually holding up this young woman from her destiny. See, this one woman was supposed to cure disease, end hunger, stop inequality, and make the earth a paradise and then the universe. And this all begins when she steps off that bus and then bumps into someone. But because of what he did, she never bumps into her. She ends up living her life normally like everyone else. And like everyone else, sometimes has regrets about what could have been. Then on her deathbed, Thanos visits her and shows her visions of everything that she was destined to be. Let her see how he robbed her of her life, and then she flatlined and he left. Thanos is a different breed of menace. Which city is the safest here? I believe it's Central City, and I'll tell you why in the form of a story. One night, a group of villains were having a poker game discussing which city was the hardest to commit crimes in. One person says, I would never go to Metropolis, it's always under attack. Gotham is so chaotic, if you get caught, you're in traction for 6 months. One guy says, Central City sounds tough, but I believe that's all hype. And everyone turned to that villain and was like, oh no, Central City is the worst. Bro, the Joker once tried to attack Central City with the Joker toxin, and before he even saw Flash threw him back to Gotham. What about Condiment King? He tried to rob the bank and then ended up in the desert. It took him almost a year to make it back home. What about Mordu? He's an interdimensional magician who stole a piece of candy from a child. And no matter what dimension he jumped through, Flash was right behind him. Flash chased him to the edge of the universe just to get a sucker back, and he was never the same. Batman will break your bones. Superman will throw you in jail, but the Flash, he'll give you a chance. He's like, that's nonsense. I just robbed the bank right now. And they said, you did what? Yeah, it's Central. Let's talk about the time someone disrespected Superman in front of Lex Luthor. One day while serving out his sentence, Lex went outside to read a book until he overheard an obnoxious conversation. One guy was spouting off to the other inmates that Stryker Island wasn't that bad compared to Blackgate and other Gotham prisons. He even went as far as to say Strikers is like a spa, but what do you expect from a place that holds Superman's enemies? Other inmate says, yeah, that's because Superman sucks because he's a damn Boy Scout. He replies, yeah, because Superman could be killing fools day and night and have the whole world under his thumb, but what does he do? Help people. What he says next is what really pisses Lex off. He says, but do you know who really is a badass and who would give Superman a run for his money? Batman. All the cool toys, and he only works at night. He's dressed in all black, and I got 2 words for you, Catwoman. During that time, Lex unpeeled an acorn, then launched it his way. Last thing he could say was Batman could kick Superman's ass any day of the week as the acorn launched in his mouth. Later on, Superman asked him, how did you know he was allergic to peanuts? He almost died, and Lex was like, he was rude.